All right, everyone, are you ready for the lightning round? Ew, ew. Yeah. So to start off our lightning round, hopefully I pronounced this right. Glenna, I think, is first. Agrivoltaics, launching a new project looking at the feasibility of combining agriculture and solar production in Alaska.
Well, I'll just introduce myself. I am working with Glenna. My name's Savannah Crichton. Similarly to Mariah, I have an engineering degree that I do not use because I loved food systems so much, and I feel like that's a huge overlap with people who like to work with their hands. They get really into food, and I know everyone in this room touches the food system in some way, shape, or form. So I'm really excited to talk about this agrivoltaics project with Glenna in a minute or so here. But yes, let's see what else. Okay, great. Yeah. So agrivoltaics, Glenna will go into what this word means, but you can probably tell from the picture it has something to do with solar panels. So it's a combination word of the words agriculture and photovoltaics. So agriculture obviously is farming or anything that has to do with the soil, and photovoltaics is just the fancy term for solar panels and harnessing sunshine for energy. So yeah, agrivoltaics can mean a lot of things. In the lower 48, solar panels are placed really close together. So you see them on roofs. If you see a solar farm in the lower 48, they're really close together. In Alaska and in northern latitudes, since the angle of the sun is so low, solar panels have to be spaced really far apart to get the optimal amount of sunlight. So that actually leaves a lot of opportunity in between solar panels because there's a lot of flat, developed land that gets a lot of sun and is close to infrastructure. So I'll let Glenna talk more about it.
Keep going. Thanks, Savannah. Yeah,
Just give the definition.
Yeah. Do we have the clicker? We do. So hi, everyone. Sorry I'm a little late to my own party here. I'm Glenna Gannon. I'm Assistant Research Professor at UAF. Savannah just introduced herself, I hope. Yeah, okay. And so this project is really in its earliest stages. We just got funding released from the US Department of Energy in the last month or so. This is a collaboration between the Alaska Center for Energy and Power and the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources and Extension with UAF. And so Savannah just gave you a nice definition. One of the things that make agrivoltaics, like who here has heard of agrivoltaics, first of all? Yeah, cool, right on. And so one of the things that we've noticed when we talk to people is like their eyebrow goes up or they're kind of confused why we might use this kind of co-location of agricultural production and energy production through photovoltaics together, and there's a few reasons why. So as precipitation continues to be more variable, we have more drought conditions, we also have rising overall temperatures within our growing season. Excuse me. The plants have various growing season challenges. And we also know that when we're developing renewable energy models like solar, oftentimes those are being put down on large gravel caps or pads. And so what happens there is that you actually see a rise in overall increase, which is not only a problem for Alaska's land because we are underlain in Alaska by about 85% permafrost, but we also have a lot of wetlands, and that also creates a heat island effect and can cause problems for the overall productivity of the solar panels. So with that, we decided to do an investigation about feasibility of agrivoltaics in Alaska. This project's been shopped around a little bit, so originally we were looking at working with the Kotzebue Electric Co-op Association, and because they already have a solar array and they actually have a lot of native growing plants, including berries in that system that seem to actually be doing well under cover of solar photovoltaics. So these are our project objectives. Just quickly, we're looking at overall social awareness of and community acceptance of social perceptions of agrivoltaic systems and interest in the adoption of multi-use land functions. Interested in identifying best practices for Alaska. Our conditions are much different here than they are in other places like the arid Southwest, where agrivoltaics are becoming more commonly used. Identify approaches that minimize the effect of the solar energy production on our lands here in Alaska. We often hear in the state of Alaska, like, there's more than enough land for everything. Well, really, Alaska's got quite a fragmented land ownership system, and we also have, as I mentioned before, permafrost in quite a bit of the state. About 43% of the state is wetlands. So really, when we think about the land that is available, the flat land that is available and ideal for things like energy production, it's directly in conflict with the areas that we might think of for ideal agricultural production as well. So in this context, it's something that we really should be considering as we talk about further developing agricultural systems and production here in Alaska. Also looking at a techno-economic analysis model, so a tool that will help producers make decisions about whether or not agrivoltaic systems might be useful for them. And then stakeholder engagement, education, and outreach. So I've already talked about this slide a little bit, but really why in Alaska? Well, the context for that is our heavy dependence on imports. So we're talking here today, everyone in this room is working on something related to increased food production, access to food, having foods available for Alaskan food available for Alaskans to eat. So this is why we're interested in this project from that perspective. And then also our energy costs in Alaska are some of the highest in the nation. In rural Alaska, folks are paying 20 to 35% more to heat and have energy in their homes than rural Alaskans, and especially those further south. There that is. So this just gives you a little sense of that food, energy, water nexus, and why agrivoltaics are useful in the co-development of food and energy production. So again, just to reiterate why we're interested in this, to address energy and food insecurity in an efficient land use model, and we're testing the feasibility of these systems here in Houston, Alaska. So what is now the largest solar farm in the state of Alaska. It just went operational in August. And so we're leasing 2.5 acres from Renewable IPP, and we'll be doing this work there starting in 2025 to 2027. So here's that little bit of timeline, prepping and going on. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Savannah to talk a little bit more about our current phase, which is the stakeholder needs assessment.
Yes, and this is the really exciting part for everyone in the room, because if you're here, you're involved with food, maybe energy in some way, and you should all take out your phone and scan this barcode, because this is a really important part of making research that is equitable to people. Part of this academic project of testing agrivoltaics is making sure it will be useful and feasible and equitable for all people in Alaska and northern states to access. So part of the research is hearing from people who farm, people who own tribal land, who have solar or renewables integrated onto their farm or home, people who are part of an electric co-op. So if any of those terms describe you, if you own land, this is research that we would like your voice to be heard as. So please sign up. You'll just take a survey, but this actually helps represent Alaska and represent people who this research will affect. So that's my pitch, and I hope you guys all sign up. But yeah, I don't know, do you have any closing?
No, not so much.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. And now our next lightning session is new report. Food security and sovereignty in Alaska Native communities. Recommendations for improving language and inclusivity in food and agriculture programming.
Thanks, Melissa. Back up here with Glenna. We're both with the University of Alaska Fairbanks Cooperative Extension and Institute of Ag and Natural Resources. We've been working on this report since right around COVID, and a lot of has changed during that time and some really positive changes, but the gist of the report is really highlighting and honoring and lifting up people who get food in other ways besides farming and agriculture, and communicating that back to agriculture policy makers and grantors on, how does this actually, how can we support other ways of getting food if the goal of the grant is to support food security? So following on what Mariah Gladstone was talking about, that's exactly what we are communicating specifically about Alaska tribes on, the history of colonization and how that still is affected in our agriculture policy. So. Acknowledging that history and exactly what Mariah talked about, I wanted to highlight a report by Janie Hipp, and Indigenous people were getting food in successful, sustainable ways, and they still are in Alaska. And however we can support those is what we want to do, whether or not it's through farming or ranching. Yes, we want to support those activities too, but in different ways. They're not always for profit. So that's really what we were getting at with the report, and I'll pass it on to Glenna for a second.
Sure. So as Heidi started to frame, we've been working on this project since about 2020. This is just a really rough representation of where we've been with regards to this report. So stakeholder engagement, which included surveys, key informant or key person interviews with folks directly engaged with building food sovereignty within their communities, and then follow-up literature review and fact-checking. So I see some faces in the room of people who were interviewed for this project, and just want to take a moment to thank them for their time and generosity, and adding to the information that we've presented here. So we've been working on data analysis, a lot of work in coding and coming up with themes and identifying what are some of the common barriers and needs for tribal producers within the state of Alaska. And the report that we are referring to is forthcoming, and so that should be out, I don't know, anytime? Anytime. It's being made pretty right now. So it's with the designer. So this is a really hard slide to read, and I apologize for that, but this is just the table of contents. This is kind of a teaser for what you guys can expect to see in the report. I can't even hardly read it from here, but there is some project background. The literature review, we talk about our methodology for collecting those surveys and interviews. There is a region by region kind of case assessment, region by region assessment, and then there's case studies or Indigenous food stories highlighted within each one of those regional subsections. And I think most importantly is from this report, we've identified 6 key recommendations for policymakers, local food activists, and everyone who's working and making our food system better. Heidi, do you want to talk about these for a second?
Yeah, so we did our own surveys and own interviews, but we also took a lot of information from what's already out there. And at this conference, it's like, oh, we should have included this, we should have included this. But in addition to the report, and where it will be published is on the Tribes Extension Program website. And I've linked to many of these food system reports, and we'll continue to update those links on the website as well. So it's really, the goal is to highlight what work tribes are doing and highlight those stories that do speak to what is actually happening, what do people want to happen around food, and hopefully others will see how they can best meet those needs. And it's also took some of the recommendations from and highlighted those from the recent Food Policy Council food security action plan. And so we hope action will be taken and take this information and, have it be a starting point and a living document as well.
And a lot of this information is meant to be consumed online, so there's a ton of hyperlinks within this document as well. So when it is released, check it out you can find that site by just Googling UAF Tribes Extension. That'll take you to the landing page for the program that Heidi was just referring to. That's where the report will exist, but then within that report embedded are a lot of links to resources, some which include technical assistance that people might be interested in, projects that folks have going on throughout the state, and other reports that Heidi just referred to as well. So with that, we thank you so much for everyone who contributed to this work and everyone who's here today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next lightning round session is Sun and Soil Podcast.
Yeah, I think so. No? Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Noah Spickelmier.
And my name is Cece Clark, and we're here to present our podcast, Sun and Soil. We just did a season on food and agriculture in Alaska entitled Feeding the Last Frontier, and that's what we're here today to tell you about.
And as you can see on the screen, you might recognize that little logo, the moose, from your goodie bags. We put a sticker or a poster in there, and we just made it based on the Alaska Grown logo, just because cool logo and wanted to do something cool. So, yeah. And then just for the duration of this project, we lived in Sitka, Alaska, and the ancestral homeland of the Tlingit people in Southeast, and just wanted to acknowledge that we're guests on their land and that they have immense knowledge in stewarding the land and creating productive food systems, which is very relevant in conversations about agriculture.
So who are we? My name is Cece. That's Noah. We both went to UC Davis. I studied psychology and have worked in journalism and podcasting.
And I studied food science while at UC Davis. And we're both passionate about both food, agriculture, and, as I said, living in Sitka as of now.
So Sun and Soil is a podcast generally about food, agriculture, and the environment. We started it in 2022. That photo on the left was our original studio, which was just a closet, and we've upgraded since then. But yeah, we're just interested in how we interact with food and the world around us.
And so the reason for doing a Alaska-specific season was that there's a lot of recent attention from the state government involved in improving food systems with the creation of the previous task force and the current task force, and we felt that public awareness through public radio and audio was just a great way to help disseminate the work and the good work going on both by the government and the people all throughout the state who are doing awesome things.
Yeah, so who did we talk to? A bunch of people involved in food and agriculture throughout the state, and a lot of you are here today, so we just want to take a quick moment to say, if we talked to you, thank you so much for giving us your time and teaching us everything we learned throughout this process. Oh, so a lot of our interviews took place in August. We did a road trip throughout the state. We started here in Anchorage, went all the way up to Fairbanks, and stopped at a bunch of places along the way, and we even took a little trip to Nome. And we talked to everyone, lots of people involved in the food system, including farmers, policymakers, scientists, professors. We just sort of wanted to talk to people with a variety of perspectives so that we can create a comprehensive picture of what's going on right now in Alaska.
And as all of you here know, that food systems are very, very complicated, and we boiled it down into 6 different episodes.
So episode 1 is sort of just an introduction to food in Alaska. We talk about this whole issue of how a lot of food is imported. And we just sort of introduce the topic. We talk about some policy that's starting to happen with regards to food security. And we just kind of set up the picture for the rest of the 6 episodes. In episode 2, we talk about plant agriculture. And we talk about how a lot of farmers here are new and beginning farmers and oftentimes working on small amounts of land. And we talk about how those farmers need a market, and we talk a lot about farmers markets. And then episode 2 is all about animal agriculture. We talk a lot about the need for more USDA infrastructure. And this episode is mainly about reindeer. And we talk about the history of reindeer and reindeer in Alaska, and on to episode 4.
So episode 4, we discussed land stewardship through alternative forms of ag and how ag doesn't need to look one single way here in Alaska, as well as the wild resources of fisheries and wild game. Episode 5 is all about how small acts on a personal and household level can have huge impacts on the resilience of the state in the face of supply chain disruptions. And episode 6 is looking forward at Alaska's future farmers, how climate change will affect the future of growing in Alaska in both positive and negative ways, and just what kids can do in the future to get involved in ag and food systems. And this is a highlight of the trip. This is hopefully incentivizes you to listen, is that's Rhonda, the educational deer at Midnight Sun Reindeer Ranch, who Bonnie Scheel is in the audience right there. And Rhonda was very cute, and that's about as close as she'd let us get to her. And if you want to hear more about Rhonda and maybe hear a tidbit from Rhonda, tune in this Friday. Episode 3 is releasing. So thank you very much.
So like Noah just said, episode 3 is about to be released. We've only released 2 episodes so far. We're gonna have 6 in total every Friday, once a week. So soon they're all gonna be out. But if you want to find it or listen to it, just Google Sun and Soil Podcast. It'll probably come up. You could also search Sun and Soil on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. If you want to keep up with us, follow our socials at Sun and Soil Podcast, and that's on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But the one we keep up with the most is Instagram. We post consistent announcements there. So if you want to know what exactly is going on, that's the one I suggest you follow. But you can listen wherever. And we've made some smaller condensed versions of our shows that are going to be airing on several NPR affiliates throughout the state in the coming months. We don't know the exact dates of when, so if you follow us on Instagram, we'll keep you up to date on there. And if it's playing in the place where you live, then you can tune in and listen to it. Next slide. If you have any questions, you can come up to us later, and we're happy to chat some more. We'll just be bopping around. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you get a chance to listen to our podcast.
All right, thank you. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'll have to listen in. Our next lightning session is titled North to the Future, an agriculture and climate change curriculum for Alaska youth from the USDA Northwest Climate Hub and Alaska FFA.
I feel like I'm graduating walking up this this stage. Okay, I got my little notes. I'm all good to go. My name's Morgan Lawrence. I'm an ORISE Climate Change Communications Fellow for the USDA Northwest Climate Hub. And today I'll be talking about North to the Future, which is a curriculum that I at the USDA Northwest Climate Hub and Kevin Fox and some other people at Alaska FFA brought together to talk about agriculture and climate change in Alaska. And so the curriculum centers around agriculture and climate change, and it's for Alaska youth in grades 6 to 12. And the goals of this curriculum were to inform future farmers, scientists, and others about how climate change could affect agriculture and natural resources, to get youth thinking about adapting to climate change in the future, and to get them hands-on experience with things like water and soil testing, research, data collection, all sorts of stuff. And an additional goal of developing this curriculum was to take some of the load off teachers because they've got a lot to do, and we wanted to just make a curriculum for them that was easy to use, all packaged up nice and neat. So let me see if I can figure out how to use this clicker. I imagine it's that button. Yep, okay. So a lot of you probably know about Alaska FFA, but I'll introduce them first. So Alaska FFA is a student-led organization that helps young people develop skills to have a career in agricultural and natural resources. FFA does incredible work in Alaska, which a lot of you are probably familiar with, and they have 13 chapters throughout the state, including some newly opened ones. So in 2021, Alaska FFA came to the USDA Climate Hub and they said, can you guys help us with making this curriculum? And we said, we would be thrilled to do that. So the USDA Northwest Climate Hub is probably a little less familiar to some of you, but we are sort of a hub of regional climate change scientists and communicators that work across Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington to bring climate change information and climate change science to farmers, ranchers, foresters, youth in this case, and anyone involved in natural resources, basically. So our goal is to be a resource for youth and adults working in these fields, and this curriculum is a part of that. So why does climate change education matter? Well, it matters for a lot of reasons, but in one sense, it helps youth understand their environment, and especially in Alaska where things are changing very quickly, this is an important aspect of climate change education. It also builds skills to work with the natural environment, and it helps youth prepare for and adapt to some of the changes that they're going to see in production in their lifetimes. Let me look at my notes here. Yes. So, yeah, teachers have a lot on their plates. This is a difficult, climate change is a difficult thing to talk about. It's very complicated. There's a lot of emerging science around it. And anything we could do to kind of help teachers talk about something that's really hard to understand is something that we wanted to do. So, and that's one of the reasons that we think it's important to sort of get this kind of curriculum out there. So, now that I've been talking about this curriculum. So the curriculum is made up of 7 lessons, and each lesson is kind of a little unit in and of itself. The PowerPoint presentations are included in each lesson. Each lesson has a sort of fully packaged lesson plan with everything a teacher needs. And some of the lessons have worksheets for students to kind of keep track of data as they go along. Anything else I need to share? Yeah, and everything is available on the Northwest Climate Hub website and is downloadable as a PDF. So if you don't have access to internet, you can download it when you do and share it with students. So I'll go through the different lesson topics. So the first lesson is about weather or climate, and it teaches students through a series of kind of photos, the difference between weather and climate. So for an example, one of the photos is a Fairbanks newscaster looking at a green screen and pointing to, I wish I had a picture of this now, but looking at a green screen and pointing to rain clouds rolling in over Fairbanks. And we ask the students, is this an example of weather or is it an example of climate? And can anyone guess which one that might be? Weather, yes, yes, winner. Yeah, and that includes a lesson plan and a PowerPoint presentation. It's pretty simple, straightforward. The second lesson is all about what climate change is. So it includes climate change impacts in Alaska, how it's already affecting Alaska, how it might affect Alaska in the future, and students get to learn about sort of the greenhouse the greenhouse gas effect using super simple materials that you probably have in your pantry. So it's kind of a nice introduction to climate change generally in Alaska. The third lesson is all about water quality. So students actually, in this lesson, they have a PowerPoint presentation where they get to learn about water quality, but then they get to go out into their communities, wherever they live, and collect a water sample, and then do water quality testing. And they test for pH, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, water temperature. And this is important in terms of climate change because water quality is likely to change with climate change, with glacial melting and permafrost thaw and many other factors. So it's important for future farmers to understand this kind of thing. The fourth lesson is about Alaskan soils. We use the NRCS Guide to Texture by Feel and the soil texture triangle, and they use those to classify soil samples. The soil samples are collected from their area, and there are some soil samples brought in just because there aren't as many types of soil in Alaska. So we wanted to show them kind of a variety. And then let's go on to the fifth lesson. So the fifth lesson is actually a game. It's Alaskan Farms on the Table is what it's called. And it's really kind of a game in economics. So the students are learning all about how the impacts of climate change, extreme events, like extreme rainfall or flooding or whatever it might be, could affect their bottom line. And they kind of see that over the course of the game, and that you can play it alone or you can play it in groups. And so that's kind of a fun little process. And that includes like a video presentation and everything that students can point to for more information. The sixth lesson is an interview, and this is one of my favorite ones because students get to go out into their communities, and we teach them interview skills in the classroom, and then they go out into their communities and they talk to a real person who is doing farming or ranching or whatever it might be in their community. And they get to talk to them about how climate change is affecting their production or how extreme events are affecting their production. So it's kind of a fun process. They get to interview it and then they write up a little summary of it at the end. And the final lesson is a group presentation where all the students come together and they share what they've learned over the course of the 7 lessons. And each student has an opportunity to present, so it's a good time for them to sort of summarize what they've learned throughout the course of the lessons. So, like I said earlier, let me see if I can get this clicker to work. Yes, where can you find the curriculum? You can find it on the USDA Northwest Climate Hub website. You can also scan this QR code, and I realize it's pretty far away, but so if you need it, you can always reach out to really anyone at the Northwest Climate Hub. You can just Google Northwest Climate Hub agriculture and climate change curriculum. It'll take you there. You can also, if you are part of FFA, if you run a chapter or are involved in FFA and you want to do this curriculum with your students, you can reach out to Kevin Fox, who's at the back of the room right now, or Taylor Nelson, and they will do their best to get you some of the kits that we put together with soil and water quality testing, and among other materials. So with that, I think I'm out of time, and we're not doing questions, but feel free to reach out to me. My name's Morgan Lawrence. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Morgan. That sounds like a lot of fun for our students. Now, our next lightning session is Youth Loan Opportunities with FSA.
Good afternoon. So I am Erin Sturdivant with the Farm Service Agency. Our office is located in Palmer. So our youth loan program, we serve ages 10 through 20. It is a operating loan up to $5,000, and it's a part of an organized educational program, which is also supervised with their ag teacher and also with a parent. The project has to be income producing to help repay the loan. And it also will help provide some practical business experience for them moving on. So some of the eligibility requirements, like I said, 10 to 20 years old. They have to be a US citizen, producing an income to pay off the loan. And it's also part of their supervised program of work. There are a few other general eligibility requirements with FSA that go along with that as well. So part of the program, they have to have an advisor, and that can be with their 4-H or FFA program, or if there's a tribal youth organization or any other ag-related program that an advisor can help them out on their project. So the loan can be used for many different aspects in ag. So you can have from crops to livestock, anything ag related. If you have a plan, you have your advisor, you have your parent that will sign off on it, then we can probably make something work. So if you have any of your FFA kids or 4-H kids are needing a little bit of extra income to get their project either started or continuing on, you can probably apply with FSA, and we'll definitely try and help you out. So part of the application process, you would submit an application. You'll have a budget, so your balance sheet and projected income and expenses, and then how your plan is going to work. So you just need to have an idea of what it is that you are trying to accomplish. When the loan is approved, that is the time when the interest rate is set, and it will be set and stay that way for the life of the loan. So we can do a loan from 1 to 7 years, just depending on what the loan is for. If it's an annual loan, of course, that's a 1-year loan. If you're purchasing, say, a piece of equipment or some breeding livestock, we can term those out up to 7 years. So we'll just tailor it to the type of project and what you're wanting the loan for. So it is a loan, so we do have requirements for the youth to sign a promissory note. We will take a lien on, depending on what the loan is for. It could be the livestock, or it could be the equipment. It could be the crops that you'll be producing if we were using the loan for purchasing seed. It'll just depend on what the loan is for, but there will be a lien on something for security. So the loan, it's really working towards building experience, business experience, and also getting the youth involved in agriculture. So we're also wanting to continue to produce safe and abundant food supply. So we're definitely encouraging youth to get involved in agriculture, and this is an avenue for that. It also then gives them experience for beginning farmer loans after they have maybe moved on to after graduation, after school. So we have 2 FSA offices in Alaska, or 2 county offices. One is in Delta Junction and one is in Palmer. So you can apply at any of our FSA offices. Let's see. Hazen Kazaks is our CED in Palmer, and Robert Garcia is our CED in Delta Junction. So you can apply to any one of those offices. Our state office is also co-located in Palmer with our county office, but the contact information is up on the screen, so if anybody has questions, you can give us a call at those numbers, or you can contact myself afterwards. And let's see, I think my contact, it was probably on an earlier slide, my email, but these are other websites for FSA for any other information beyond youth loans, as well as our other loan programs or other FSA farm programs. So I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next lightning session is titled, sorry, need my glasses. Continuing Education in Rural Communities for Food Processing. Okay, we are going to skip that one. And if they do come, we are more than welcome to have them and present after our last one listed. So, moving on, our next presentation is on Alaska Cold Storage Co-op, cold and dry storage with in-house distribution.
How does this thing work here? Uh-oh. Oh, all right. Getting a handle on the presentation here. All right, hello everybody. I'm Zach Menzel. We're talking today about a cold storage food co-op here for the state of Alaska. I have some time in the food industry, just about 10 years, and background in business development, as well as commercial real estate sales and leasing. Let's read.
I want to thank the Alaska Food Policy Council, Alaska Farm Bureau, and the Western Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Center for organizing and hosting this wonderful event. I'd also like to thank Zach for his energy and collaboration on this project. My name is Joel Kladuas. I'm born and raised in Alaska. I have a background in economic development, and I'm currently working on Alaskanizing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This particular project is related to goal number 2, zero hunger, goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities, and goal number 12, responsible consumption and production. This project is about creating an Alaska food co-op focused on storage and distribution.
Thanks, Joel. So today we're going to talk in brief to explore with you a collaborative approach to a food co-op with a healthy component of cold storage. First, we're going to talk about why cold storage is important for the state of Alaska. Second, we'll talk a little bit more about the physical vision. Joel will talk about that. Then we'll talk about the process, because it is kind of a long tail process to get something like this to come to fruition. So many stakeholders involved and a lot of time just in planning and preparation. And last of all, but not least, we'll talk about the next steps and how people can participate if they're interested. So why cold storage? The 2023 Alaska Food Security Task Force noted that over 95% of food in the state of Alaska is imported, which is pretty important because there's not a huge amount of product on the shelves from the state, but at any given time we only have about 3 to 5 days of food product on the shelves. So something that Joel and I would like to see happen, as I'm sure many of us would, is to have more products from local producers. And an important part of that is having capacity to store food and give it increased shelf life to get it to market. And so cold storage is definitely a component in that vision. So let's see. The intention here is to enable local producers to have the infrastructure that's accessible. We'll talk about the vision now.
So before getting into the vision, I think it's important to address the idea of food security. And not so long ago, Alaskans were food secure. Alaska Natives subsisted on food in the land and the ocean. And indigenous cultures and heritage can teach us a lot about food security. But to achieve food security in Alaska, we need a common goal. And that goal could be to flip the import-export ratio. Rather than import 95% of our food, what if Alaskans embarked on a shared mission to import only 5% of our food and produce 95% within Alaska? In order to make progress towards such an ambitious goal, we would need the infrastructure to store and distribute the additional food grown and produced in Alaska. It's a chicken and egg problem. We cannot produce more food without a place to store it, and we don't need more storage until we can grow and produce it. We need a model where storage and distribution can grow in parallel to production. So the vision here is really an Alaska food co-op with an emphasis on storage and distribution. So members of this co-op could include Alaskans who grow, catch, harvest, make, store, distribute, sell, buy, or eat local food, and adhere to the 7 cooperative principles. So buy-in is achieved through this multi-stakeholder cooperative because all members have equal ownership and voting rights, and profit is distributed to its members. So again, the vision here is to create an Alaska food co-op with a focus on storage and distribution.
Thanks, Joel. So as I mentioned before, there's some work that needs to be done to make this into a reality. Starting off, we want to come with a collaborative approach and understand the needs of the community before proposing any type of infrastructure. So starting off with a needs assessment, engaging with key stakeholders, be them producers or value add processors or third-party logistics team members. Once we get kind of a better idea of some of the needs of the community for this type of facility, we would kind of start identifying core tenants, who would take up what space, what would the capacity of that space be, and then we can move forward to developing more of a revenue model and start looking at potential sources of funding for this type of a project. Once we have identified sources of funding, we can proceed to site selection, whether it's existing infrastructure, which would be preferable, or if it would be new construction. Then we would, proceed. Obviously, this is just kind of highlights. Open the food co-op and food hub to get it operational, and then continue with growing the community with community outreach.
Thanks, Zach. So our next step is to host a community gathering a week from today at Kaladi Brothers here in Anchorage. If you would like to attend this event or would like to schedule a time to talk about this project with Zach and myself, please email us, joel@sustainak.com and zach.menzel@gmail. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, storage and distribution are definitely issues in Alaska-wide, statewide, right? So thank you so much for working on this. And it'll be exciting. It's exciting that you're all getting together with others in the near future. So good for you. All right, moving on to our next session. We have the USDA Climate Hub Fellow for Alaska Agriculture.
All right, hi, my name is Erin, and I am a new fellow with the USDA Northwest Climate Hub located here in Alaska. So I just started the position, so I don't really have a lot to share as far as like what I'm doing in this position, but I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself, talk a little bit about like what the climate hubs are, just in case people aren't familiar, my background, and kind of what I hope to achieve in this role. All right, so I'm going to start off just a little bit of background on the USDA Climate Hubs. Morgan gave a little bit of an introduction, but for those of you who want to know more. So the Climate Hubs are a cross-agency collaboration within the USDA, primarily with the Agricultural Research Service, the Forest Service, and NRCS, though they do collaborate with other agencies as needed, to deliver scientific tools and information to agricultural producers. And there are 10 hubs across the United States, plus one international hub. And Alaska is part of the Northwest Climate Hub, along with Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And each of the hubs really focuses on their specific regions and what the issues and concerns are for that region. And then each hub is led by a representative from either the Research Service or Forest Service, with 2 science co-leads, one from NRCS and one from either the ARS or FS. And primarily the work that the Climate Hubs does is through the 3 main work streams that they have, which is research and science information synthesis, tool development and implementation, as well as stakeholder education, outreach, and engagement. And much of this work is carried out by the Climate Hub fellows, like myself and Morgan. These are recent master's or PhD students who are interested in science communication and applications of research. And most of what the Climate Hubs does is really supporting existing work. We don't really like do our own research. We're really here to help support the work that's already happening. And if you want to learn more, you can go to the Climate Hub's website and specifically navigate to the Northwest. There's already a lot of really great Alaska articles on the website, most of which were written by Morgan. So if you want to see what they've been doing, check it out. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. So I got my bachelor's in microbiology from Louisiana State University. I got really interested in microbes, honestly, when I found out there was a professor at LSU who worked on microbes in Antarctica, which I thought was the coolest thing, that you could use science to go to a place like Antarctica. So I got really interested in microbes in frozen environments. I didn't get to go to Antarctica, but I did get to come to Alaska. So in summer of 2013, when I was just after my sophomore year, I think, I did a summer research experience for undergraduates here at UAA. And then the next summer, I got to come back with my lab at LSU and work on a field project on Matanuska Glacier, looking at the microbial communities there. So both these experiences really allowed me to fall in love with Alaska, and I looked for opportunities to come back. It took almost 10 years, but here I am. In the meantime, though, I got my PhD in ecology in a joint program between San Diego State and UC Davis, where I worked on the role of microbes in the soil carbon cycle, specifically looking at microbial carbon use efficiency and how that changes with soil health changes. So if the soil is really infertile or more fertile or less fertile, how does that affect carbon use efficiency? I meant to take these slides out, actually, so I'm just going to skip through this really quick. Okay, so after grad school, I wanted to get really into more applied research, and so that kind of led me to the world of agriculture. Most of my PhD work was in just natural forest soils. So I did a postdoc at the Noble Research Institute in Oklahoma, where I led a project looking at the effects of grazing management practices on rangeland soil health and plant communities. So during that position, I got to learn a lot about agriculture and specifically rangelands, and also how to identify 50 different types of grasses, so it was a lot of fun. But during that position, I was realizing that I was really a lot more interested in the applications of research and translating research into useful products. And so that led me to doing a 1-year science policy fellowship with the National Academies of Science Gulf Research Program. And so for that position, I was hosted by the Mississippi-based RestoreAct Center of Excellence, which is a grant agency in Mississippi that funds oysters and water quality research. Using funds from the Restore Act. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the Restore Act, it is the funds resulting from the criminal and civil penalties from the BP oil spill. And so that's kind of spread across a lot of different work within the 5 Gulf states. So once that came to a close this past August, I took this position with the Climate Hubs, bringing me back to Alaska finally. And so this particular position is a collaboration between USDA and Washington State University, so that's why the little Washington State Cougar is there. So I technically work for Washington State University, but I'm located up here. All right, so just a little bit about like what I hope to achieve in this role. So I just began this position this past September. I think today is exactly 2 months since I started. So in the meantime, I've just been kind of getting to know people, trying to meet different people, learn about what's going on in Alaska agriculture, and find different ways that I can plug myself in. So some of my main goals here are to support existing work in Alaska related to those 3 Climate Hub work streams that I mentioned earlier. Just to remind us, that's the Research and Science Information Synthesis. I'm going to be physically located with the NRCS office in Palmer, and I know that they have a lot of data from past projects that they want me to help like analyze and translate into like useful products and useful ways to look at it. So I'll definitely be doing some of that with them. The tool development, this could be like a dashboard of showing your data, maps, fact sheets, technical guides, whatever it may be. And then again, that education, outreach, and engagement piece as well. Yeah, so I think I basically already said this. I want to use my existing experience to help support Alaska agriculture. And though I'm located with NRCS, as a fellow, I really have this flexibility to plug myself into a lot of different groups. So if you have work that is related to these 3 things and you think that we could collaborate together, I would love to collaborate. So please reach out to me. I'll have my email at the end of this. Okay, that's the NRCS and others. And then I'm just going to skip through that. All right, and so that's my contact information, aaron.oliver@wcu.edu. So please reach out if you want to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome back to Alaska. It's great having you here. All right, and our final lightning session is the outrage of hungry military families.
Hi, my name is Josh Protas, and I am proud to represent Mazona Jewish Response to Hunger. Today's Veterans Day, a day to honor those who bravely serve our country. But most folks don't know that millions of veterans and even active duty military families struggle with food insecurity, unsure of how they'll put food on the table for their families. Before I tell you more about how we can address this crisis, let's think about how absurd it is that we're even talking about military families struggling with hunger. This is a preventable problem, one that should never exist in the first place, let alone to persist for many years with little to no attention or action to address it by our military leaders and public officials. There's simply no reason that veterans and military families should experience the painful reality of hunger. The struggling military families feel outraged, as they should, that they make great sacrifices in service to our country, yet find themselves enduring hardship, often facing barriers to accessing assistance that they need and should be entitled to. We all should feel outraged that this situation exists and that our elected leaders allow it to continue, some ignoring this uncomfortable and harsh reality, some going so far as to blame struggling military families for the hardships that they experience. Military hunger is preventable and unconscionable, and it is a choice by our government not to prioritize solutions. My organization, Mazona Jewish Response to Hunger, believes in the inherent dignity of every person. We are grounded in a central belief that regardless of a person's circumstances, no one deserves to go hungry. We've made it a priority to spotlight issues in populations that have long been overlooked. And so just to personalize the issue and not talk only in numbers, I want to share the story of Gabriel. a Marine in the San Diego area. Gabriel was very brave and kind in sharing about his experiences. I want to use his words just to reflect about what this looks like at a personal level. So Gabriel shared with us, after I got my BA, I went to work in personal finances. I taught people how to get out of debt, apply for retirement, things like that. I really liked the job, but I always wanted to serve my country. So 1.5 years ago, I joined the Marines. I'm a corporal based in Camp Pendleton in the San Diego area. I like being in the Marines, but with a wife and a child and another one on the way, my paycheck of less than $2,000 a month isn't enough to make ends meet. It was easier when my wife worked in insurance, but the cost of daycare is so high that it didn't make sense. I'm doing all I can in serving my country, and I have to worry about how I'm going to buy food? I'm not ashamed to say that, hey, I need help to be able to feed my family. We got WIC when our daughter was a baby, but recently, when we applied for food stamps, we were denied because our basic allowance for housing gets counted as income. The only reason we're even getting by is because our neighbor told us about the food distributions, which we go to twice a month. I don't think the government protects military families enough because so many of us need to go to food distributions run by outside groups. I don't really know how you go about fixing the problem, but it would really help if the military paid us more or the commissary was less expensive and if the housing allowance was not considered part of our paychecks. We are the only job where we have to risk our lives to protect the Constitution of the United States. So shouldn't the government make sure that we can properly feed our families? There's no reason that people like Gabriel should struggle to put food on the table. For over a decade, we've been diligently leading the national efforts to call attention to this issue and to address both military and veteran food insecurity. In 2012, when we first became aware of an alarming number of military families struggling with food insecurity, we made it a priority to understand the issue and explore policy solutions. We thought this would be an easy, quick fix. Surely there could be broad bipartisan support to make sure that we can do right by our military families. But over a decade later, we are still fighting for a solution and facing a crisis. Time and again, my colleagues and I have been criticized, dismissed, and ignored for raising this issue, both by policymakers and even by some in the anti-hunger community. It's embarrassing as a country that we let military families go hungry. But ignoring the problem doesn't make it go away. We recognize that this is an issue that's often hidden and misunderstood, and military families and veteran families who are struggling don't want to call attention to the situation that they're facing. They're embarrassed, there's a lot of shame and stigma, and it's hard for them even to speak out and ask for help. But it's a crisis nevertheless, and we can all play a part in enacting solutions. The inaction of policymakers in the US Congress has allowed this situation to persist for years and to grow even worse, especially during the course of the pandemic. Food insecurity exacerbated in military and veteran populations during this time, contributing to the worsening of diet-related chronic disease, lost productivity, and even spikes in suicide rates. And I know that's especially an issue here in Alaska. Right now, Congress and the executive branch have an opportunity to provide a meaningful support to veterans and military families through critical bills like the National Defense Authorization Act and the next Farm Bill. Many of you at this festival probably know about the Farm Bill, and we've heard about some of that today, but you might not know that there are common sense and bipartisan provisions on the table that would address the long-standing and long-overlooked crises of military and veteran hunger. And want to give a shout out to Senator Lisa Murkowski, who spoke earlier. She's long been a champion of solutions to address this issue, both in the Farm Bill and in the National Defense Authorization Act. In my zone, we see this as a matter of mission readiness, troop retention, and future recruitment. Addressing military hunger will also contribute to suicide prevention efforts and help with racial inequities in our armed forces. This Veterans Day, today, the best way to honor those who serve our country is to ensure that they can feed themselves and their families and do so with dignity. Please visit, and the QR code will take you there, endmilitaryhunger.org to join this effort. There are a lot of resources and information about the issue and ways to get involved. I'd like to close by naming some of the challenges that have made a solution to military hunger so elusive, and to challenge all of you to shift your mindset and join in the campaign to end this problem once and for all. For many years, we've dealt with leaders in Congress, the administration, and at the Department of Defense who don't think that military hunger is a real problem, or that it's the role of the federal government to address it. They'd rather sweep the problem under the rug or abdicate responsibility to a charitable sector that is already stretched beyond capacity. In this absence of adequate government response and leadership, direct service providers that only help to meet immediate needs of food insecure military families, though well-intentioned, actually do a disservice to the issue by not questioning why this is a problem in the first place and working to address the underlying systemic issues. Similarly, media stories that offer a compelling glimpse into the issue of military hunger and only highlight an example of a family going to a food pantry give the public the false impression that making a donation to your local food bank will solve the problem. We can't let the government off the hook. This is absolutely the responsibility of the federal government to make sure that military families and veterans have what they need to meet their basic needs. So my challenge to all of you is to take a both-and approach to ending military hunger. Support charitable efforts that meet the immediate needs of military families and veterans so that they can put food on the table today, and support and engage in advocacy efforts to demand government action to adequately provide for our military families and our veterans so that none of them face the painful reality of hunger tomorrow. Together, we can ensure that all who serve our country have what they need to feed themselves and their families. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh, and a huge thank you to Mazon for all of the support that you've given to different organizations. Appreciate that. And yes, this is definitely something that we need to look at with our military families. You know, the Food Bank of Alaska and also Catholic Social Services has helped many military families here in the area.